Dr. Deepan will be sharing some interesting cases, pictures of some interesting cases, and we will be allowing an interactive session. The participants of this session will be allowed to comment in the chat box about these cases as well. So, I guess we'll start with the screen sharing about some interesting clinical cases that Dr. Deepan has experienced.
As per your request to discuss some of the clinical cases, to show you some of the clinical cases, Srijan had asked me to put up some of the clinical cases that might interest you. So I am discussing some of the things that you will find in your PG life and your as a practicing ophthalmologist. So you can interact with your chat box. We will look at your answers. We can have a good interaction. We won't get much into the clinical cases because it would take up a lot of time, but we would go in as much as we can. Okay. And don't get worried about these cases. These cases are little of higher standard. Nobody is going to ask you these cases during your UG exams. They are going nowhere near these things. These are all PG standard. So don't get worried if you are not able to identify or anything. This is a little high standard just to show you. So this is a case that came to us. This is a 20-year-old male patient, student by occupation, presented to us with a chief complaint of recurrent episodes of pain and redness in both eyes since last 5 years. Dimness of vision in both eyes since last 3 years. Anybody tell something from the pictures shown?
Participants, you can comment on the chat box about the diagnosis if you feel you know the answer.
See, let's see the pictures. Go to the pictures. Here you find that this is the right eye. The pupil does look normal. No? This is the posterior synechia form. But with this you find, this is the festoon pupil that you generally read in your books. This is a sign of incomplete posterior synechia. So there is one more finding that is not visible here. There are fine KPs. So you have recurrent episodes, pain, redness, both eyes, with KPs, with posterior synechia. Anybody? Some answers are coming on personal chat. Yeah. Recurrent anterior non-granulomatous uveitis. It is a posterior synechia in the right eye. The left eye also has the same uveitis, but it hasn't formed a posterior synechia. This pupil is dilated. This is pharmacologically dilated. It is not pathologically dilated. We have dilated it with tropicamide plus. Okay. Now to all for those who are very much interested with neuroophthalm. 20-year female presented with a sudden onset ptosis in the left eye, followed by progressive difficulty in ocular movement in the left eye, and also complained of diplopia. Best corrected visual acuity 6.6 in both the eye. Now let us go through this case. This case is still under investigation. This is a case that had come to us and we have sent her for some investigation. So we won't jump to diagnosis or something. Let's just see what are the clinical findings. In the left eye, you have ptosis. Which muscle is supposed to keep the lids up, opening of the lids? LPS. LPS is applied with third nerve. So you think there is something related to the third nerve, or maybe an LPS palsy can also be thought at this point. So you have two things, can be you have many things, but from this picture you think of two things. One is neurogenic cause, one is myogenic. There is no mechanical cause of ptosis here. There is no swelling or no mass in the lids. So it is a third nerve thing, or a myogenic of the LPS. Now let's come to this picture, the right hand side picture. What you see here is there is a the pupil is dilated. Now this is not pharmacologically dilated. The patient came to the OPD with this dilated pupil. This was a case that was referred to us from neurology. This patient had actually come to a neurology OPD and was referred to us. So this also shows some sign that the third nerve can be involved, because the parasympathetic supply comes from the third nerve and it supplies the sphincter pupilla. So if that is malfunctioning, the dilator pupilla will overtake the function and it will come to this picture. See, this is the primary gaze. See, this is the primary gaze. Patient is looking straight. Now let's look at this. This is patient is looking upward and medially. Okay, so the right eye, it is the inferior oblique that is working, but the uh, but in this eye there is no movement of this eye. Similarly, see this eye, this picture, the right eye is looking down, but this eye it is in this primary position. Same with this picture, it is looking up. The superior rectus, superior inferior oblique function, this is showing none. This is also the same. It is looking medially, and this eye, it is still in the primary gaze. So this eye should have gone laterally. So there is also, you suspect there is some lateral rectus deformity or the nerve is deformed. So lateral rectus is supplied by the sixth nerve. So the lateral rectus is also, now you start suspecting something of the sixth nerve also. Now see, in all the cases, this eye stays in the primary position only. So all the muscles are showing restriction of movement in this eye. So it can be two things. It can be a neurogenic cause and it can be a myogenic cause. So first, if it's a neurogenic cause, so all my nerves, the third, the oculomotor nerves, the trochlear nerve, and your abducens nerve, this all are somehow somewhere compressed. Now, can you tell me where it can be compressed to give this type of picture? If somebody tells orbital apex or the near the annulus of Zinc, I would like to show you this question where the patient presents us with a 6-6 vision. The orbital apex, the near the annulus of Zinc, it also contains the optic nerve, but the optic nerve is not compressed. So the most common place is the cavernous sinus, where all these motor nerves pass through. And so we suspected in this patient a hemangioma of the cavernous sinus or cavernous sinus thrombosis or a mass from the parenchyma of the brain that is pressing on the cavernous sinus. We advised to get an MRI. Now, to those who are thinking it can be a myogenic cause, it can be a myogenic cause of chronic progressive dystrophy of the ocular extraocular muscles. But only thing that does not fulfill is this pupil. Pupil wise, the pupil dilated. The myogenic cause, generally it would affect the muscles outside the extraocular muscles, but the pupil is also affected. So there is likely this is a neurogenic cause, and there is some lesion in the or some mass that is compressing on at the cavernous sinus. So I think you find this little interesting, little difficult to understand maybe for some, but interesting. Let's come to the third case. There is a 65-year-old female presented with gradual progressive dimness of vision in the left eye. Vision in the left eye was PL negative. Okay, there was no vision in the left eye. Fundus examination showed a blackish brown mass obscuring the aperture. So when you do a fundus examination, you don't see anything, you don't see any structures, you just see a black mass, brownish mass that covers the backside of the pupil. These are the radiological investigations. Can you diagnose from here anything, anybody? This picture, this USGB scan, it is very in many exams they give this picture, and this is very characteristic, and also the picture is very good. It shows exactly the structure. Somebody then retinoblastoma. No, why do you suspect retinoblastoma? And that too in a 65-year-old female. Retinoblastoma is seen in the younger. No? In 3 years is the peak to diagnose retinoblastoma. And it won't present to you with a blackish mass. It presents with a white pupillary reflex. No? So let's discuss. See, something that is coming up on the posterior surface of the globe. One more chat has come. Let us see. Vitreous hemorrhage. No, vitreous hemorrhage, it is not vitreous hemorrhage. Because vitreous hemorrhage would be limited to this space only. Only the vitreous. See, this is the globe. Something is coming out of the globe. So something is coming out. This is the retina. This layer. This color. This picture common given. This is the color stud appearance. The mass it breaks through the RP groups on the collagenous. So it doesn't allow the mass to expand very much. So it presses upon the sides, it doesn't let it grow. And so it grows in and then it grows like a tree, like this. So this is a colosted appearance. You see T1 MRI, the mass. In T2, this is the mass. Okay. This is a case of choroidal. 25-year female with complaints of recurrent episodes of redness in both the eyes since last 9 years, with associated pain radiating to the temporal region and has been associated with mild fever. Just a second. Mild fever. Sclera image shows diffuse deep. Just a second, please. Yes. Sclera image shows diffuse deep scleral congestion with dilated tortuous vessels in crisscross arrangement with bluish discoloration with overlying non-connectable vessels. This is the picture. I have given the description of the sclera because this picture I think will be difficult for you to understand and interpret. Can you diagnose? Anybody? Can you tell this? Sclera shows a bluish black discoloration, these tortuous vessels which are dilated, and the overlying conjunctiva is normal. And this is recurrent. And young female, also fever. This is, don't get in distress or feel bad if you cannot diagnose. These are not UG cases. This I could have also not answered at your level. This is your all PG cases. These are not to scare you. This is just to show you some cases so you feel interesting and know that ophthalmology is much more than only cataracts. So this is a case of chronic anterior recurrent necrotizing scleritis. See, this is why do we call it scleritis and not conjunctivitis? Here, you don't see redness in the conjunctival vessels. You see the normal conjunctival vessels. Can you see these are thin vessels which are normal in architecture? But the inside, and I have also mentioned overlying normal conjunctival vessels. Now, this bluish black discoloration, it tells about the involvement of the sclera. It means deeper structures that are involved. If the conjunctiva would have been involved, it would have been giving a reddish hue. But deeper structure, and also it is recurrent episodes. So once it is recurrent episodes, the repeated inflammation of the sclera makes it thin. So once the sclera gets thin, what you see beyond that is the uvea. You know, the uvea contains the melanosomes, the melanocytes. That gives the bluish black discoloration. So this is a case of scleritis. Now this one is quite interesting. You don't generally come across these cases during your UG. Patient came with a corneal opacity during following childhood trauma with anterior staphyloma. Patient came to us, had a childhood trauma long back in uh, during in the teens, I suppose. I don't remember exact age, but he came to us at the age of 48. And after that, he was having hand movement in this eye. He was planned for this procedure, and this is the post-op picture. Can you tell what procedure is performed in this? Anybody? It might be. This is a case of penetrating keratoplasty. This is what you normally know as the corneal transplant surgery. Here see the opacified cornea has been removed and the donor corneal button has been sutured. You can see the sutures being placed. This is the intra picture taken from the monitors in the OT. And this is the third poster of the picture. You can see such nice clear cornea with well intact sutures. The patient slowly regained a vision of 636 while discharged and still is under follow-up. We hope he would regain more of vision. This is this thing I want to tell something here is this eye bank. If you are when you are taking colleges and if you are lucky to have an eye bank, there most colleges, many of the state government colleges don't have. If you are having an eye bank in your setup, you get a lot of cases of eye harvesting that PGs, first year PGs do, and corneal transplant surgeries. You get to assist a lot of cases, so you get a good if you have an eye bank. I am happy and I feel fortunate to have an eye bank in my setup, and we are doing quite a lot of such cases. And not only this, penetrating keratoplasty is surgery where you replace the whole cornea. Now, more advanced versions like we just replace a layer of the cornea, like we have come to SALC, the superficial anterior lamellar keratoplasty, where we just take out the bone membrane and the epithelium and replace it with the bone membrane and epithelium of the donor cornea. We can also take out the endothelium and the decimates and replace it with the endothelium and decimates of the donor. This is called TISEC. So ophthalmology is so advanced and so intricate. We take out microscopic structures from the eye and replace it. Can somebody identify this machine and also this report given out by this machine? Okay, some answers have come. Somebody has written RCT. I think you have misspelled it. A typo error. It is OCT. Okay. This is ocular coherence tomography. This is the machine that gives a detailed anatomical uh, optical picture of the layers of the retina. And can somebody tell me about this image? This is a little difficult. This is image of a PED. PED is pigment epithelial detachment. See, this is the RP layer that you study in your anatomy. This all layers are seen. We won't go into much detail. It would be a little difficult for you at this stage. But see the fluid below this RP layer. This is PED. Now, this is the patient who presented to you with dimness of vision and night blindness. Fundus pictures. This you do the fundus of this patient and uh, do fundus, and you see this. I have a question. It says, isn't it below the choroid? Okay, last one. Let us go back once. Yes. Not under the choroid. Okay, let us come back to that once we discuss it. I would come back. It is not going up. Some picture, anybody? Yeah, it is. People answering it right. This is retinitis pigmentosa. See, these are the bony black spicules you see. It comes with a triad. This is the optic atrophy. This is consecutive optic atrophy. What is consecutive optic atrophy? Optic atrophy can be of many types, of which there is primary, secondary, consecutive. So in this consecutive is when you have another retinal pathology that is leading to the optic atrophy. So optic atrophy, black bony spicules that are more in the periphery, and slowly as the disease grows, it comes back. And here are the attenuated vessels, the arterioles, arterioles. So you see, this is not a healthy fundus. This is the pathologic fundus. Now the screen share has stuck, I think. I remember your question, that choroid thing. I would come back, don't worry. The patient presented with pain, irritation, blurring of vision in the right eye. Corneal sensations were diminished. Fluorescein staining and slit lamp examination shows this picture. This is a typical picture, very typical of this disease. Can anybody identify? No. Dendritic corneal ulcer. It is a viral etiology. Keratitis, yeah. This is a type of keratitis. It is generally keratitis is inflammation of the cornea. It can be of many types. This is the viral one. Okay, it comes with this peculiar dendritic pattern. You see this. Somebody asking dendritic ulcer. No, not fungal. Okay, this is not fungal. This is not specific of fungal. Fungal comes with a well-defined lesion that has a huge ring of stromal edema, satellite lesion. It would have hypopyon. It is a very destructive type of lesion. It would have hypopyon and all. These are superficial ulcers, the viral. Can you identify this procedure that has been done? Iris. Yeah, right. Yak laser iridotomy. Okay. Oh, this has stopped working, this cursors. This case you see. This is a child that has presented with the lesion shown in the picture. You see this lesion? It was present since birth, congenital. What is the most probable diagnosis? This is the post-op picture. What is the procedure that has been performed? Anybody? This is, so let's discuss it. This is a, yeah, some answers have come. Coloboma, no. No, not coloboma. This is a dermoid. This is a limbal dermoid. Okay. See, it is from congenital. Coloboma is a defect. Coloboma is that region has not formed the optic nerve. It is not generally seen like this, because once you study the pathology of the embryology of the eye, you understand coloboma wouldn't present like this. Coloboma would be in the iris. It would be in the optic disc. It would be in the retina. It won't be here. Okay, so it is a dermoid. Don't feel anything sad or anything if you are not able to answer this. These are quite difficult level. This is a dermoid, limbal dermoid, better. Okay. Can anybody tell me a syndrome associated with limbal dermoid and also some other findings seen in this picture? This picture is particularly taken for this purpose. See, here, okay, I have one answer. Okay, let's discuss. See, this is the preauricular tags. Okay, and you also have a limbal dermoid. If you also have a myelomeningocele in a patient, in this patient, okay, you form the triad, and it would come to us the golden heart syndrome. Okay, so you have this, you have this. If you also have this myelomeningocele, you will form the golden heart syndrome. So when keep in mind when you see this limbal dermoid, also check for these syndromes. This is the after the this is the limbal dermoid has been excised, and this is the patch graft. One picture you saw before, that was of the penetrating keratoplasty. Penetrating keratoplasty, it was the full cornea was replaced, and here the layers of the some of the layers of the cornea have been taken out, and a partial thickness layer of the cornea has been placed. This is just to patch. Like if you take out the layer, the cornea would be very thin, and then it might bulge and even rupture. So you don't want that. So you have just put the layer of the cornea for support. Okay. So these are the cases. It's not stop working this cursor. So it's the OCT picture somebody wanted. Okay. So see this white line. This white line is this one. My cursor visible there? Don't think so. This white line just above the black fluid, this is the fluid, this black one is the fluid. This white line is the RP. Okay, this is the choroid. This is the choroid. Okay, this see, if see this black spaces, this is the choroid. Because why this black spaces? These are the vessels, the halide vessels, the sattler, the vessels. So it is a quite vascular layer. This is the choroid. If you have fluid here, this white layer wouldn't have been taken up. White layer would have been as a down, and you have fluid here. Like you see a small speck of fluid just here, like this. This would have been a retinal detachment, exudative retinal detachment. If you have fluid in this layer, like the outer plexiform, you may think of a CME or something. Okay. Did I answer you sufficiently? Whoever had the doubt. Okay. I think it is sufficient. And any
I think it's sufficient.
okay.
I think it's sufficient. If there is a doubt persisting, you can like write it down in the chat box right now. In the
Yeah.
meantime, I would like to say that this golden hour and this difference between the PED and CME was very nicely explained. To be honest, I've never seen a golden hour in my life in the ophthalmology wards or so in any other wards. I'm yet to see one, but this was, of course, unique. So I guess we are done with this. If there is any doubts persisting, you may ask right now.